Pugin's Ghosts of the Present. The present year is 1846, and 2 years previously, Pugin tragically suffered the loss of his second wife, Louisa Button. On her death, Pugin instantly felt the return of an all-too-familiar grief, a grief that had all but consumed him from the age of 20, when he tragically lost his first wife, Anne, and both his parents within a matter of months of each other. Grief-stricken, Pugin wrote at the time of his loss of Louisa,
"To live without my beloved is utter misery. I feel like a mariner at sea without a compass. My house is sad and lonely. Night after night I have sat alone in my library, too unhappy to study. I often return from a long journey. The children retired to rest. No one to greet me. I only see a servant, and my heart sinks within me."
Now with a young family to support, Pugin dared not fully succumb to his despair, and instead chose to channel his grief and love for those he lost into one of his greatest works, St. Giles at Cheadle. One of the church's crowning glories is the painting above the chancel arch, which is known as the Doom. Now I appreciate that sounds rather ominous, but it is essentially a painting depicting the Last Judgment, and was a very common feature of medieval parish churches until they were whitewashed over as part of the Reformation. Pugin commissioned the painting in Rome, where it was created on canvas and shipped over to be installed in the church, rather than being painted directly onto the wall. St. Giles's Doom depicts Christ sat at the top, flanked by Mary and St. John, underneath whom a host of angels blow long trumpets to rouse the dead for judgment. To the left, vibrant flames lick the contorted bodies of the damned, before the jaws of hell consume them for all eternity. On the right, clad in white, are the righteous, called from their graves to be exonerated, and granted entry into the kingdom of heaven by St. Peter, who holds a great key. Among the blessed is a beautiful young woman, wearing a garland of white flowers in her dark hair. Upon her face she wears a stoic expression, as she looks up at all those who would judge her, while she holds an oil lamp in an outstretched hand. The portrait of the beautiful woman in the Doom was not simply born of the artist's imagination, but is actually a likeness of Lady Gwendolen Talbot, the deceased daughter of the 16th Earl. Pugin requested her inclusion in the painting as a way of honouring and remembering all those who'd gone before. Gwendolen was the youngest of the Earl's two daughters and was once described by King William IV as the greatest beauty in the realm. The Earl strongly believed in the educational value of travel, therefore the family frequently spent the winter months abroad so that his daughters could experience different countries and become proficient in several languages. Gwendolen was particularly enchanted by Rome, falling in love with not only the city's romantic architecture but also its culture. During one of her many stays in the city, she attended a lavish masked ball where she donned the attire of her heroine, Lalla Rookh, from the romantic work by Irish poet Thomas Moore. At the ball there was much merriment to be had, with the finest wines and dishes being served to the highest echelons of Roman society. When everyone had had their fill, the music began, and Gwendolen's elder sister Mary took her by the hand.
"Come, Gwendolen, do let us join the dance."
Gwendolen at first resisted her sister's pleas, but soon found herself being pulled through the jovial crowd. The coins on Gwendolen's shawl made a gentle tinkling sound with her every step, and soon she was laughing too as would-be suitors took turns to spin the sisters around the room. It was then Gwendolen noticed a young man watching her from across the dance floor, his beautiful blue eyes meeting her gaze. When the song finished, she politely declined the invitation to continue the dance, and walked towards the young man, intrigued by his gaze. He watched her intently, and when she reached him, he bowed and kissed her hand.
"May I take this dance?"
he asked. Gwendolen nodded. Gwendolen felt instantly at ease in the stranger's arms, and her beauty instantly enchanted him. There they remained in one another's embrace, dancing the rest of the night, not once glancing or noticing another soul around them. Gwendolen would soon come to learn that the stranger was in fact a prince named Mark Antonio Borghese. The prince was so enamoured with Gwendolen that as soon as he could, he made her his princess, and they were married in a sumptuous ceremony in the prince's family chapel in Rome. As a gift to his new bride, the prince gave Gwendolen a stunning sapphire ring, engraved with her name and the date of their wedding. Gwendolen adored the ring, telling her new husband she would treasure it always, for the colour would forever remind her of the first moment she caught sight of his blue eyes across the ballroom. The prince loved Gwendolen not only for her outstanding beauty, but also on account of her kind and generous nature. Although they'd met in lavish surroundings, Gwendolen actually preferred to shun the more frivolous aspects of her elegant lifestyle, choosing instead to devote her time to those less fortunate than herself. As a result, she was universally adored by the people of Rome, who lovingly nicknamed her the Mother of the Poor. After 5 years of marriage and living happily in Rome, Gwendolen wished to return home to Alton Towers to visit her parents. By this time, Gwendolen the prince had borne 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, with a 4th child on the way. At the end of July 1840, Gwendolen gave birth to their son during her stay at the Towers. There she remained with her parents, who doted on their new grandchild, until finally returning to Rome in mid-October. A week after returning home, Gwendolen was suddenly struck down with scarlet fever, and whilst the doctors tried their best to treat her, she sadly passed away on October the 27th. If losing his beloved Gwendolen was not enough, all 3 of their sons also died shortly after, when they contracted measles, leaving the prince alone with only his daughter Agnes. The heartbroken prince arranged for Gwendolen to be buried in the family chapel in Rome, but before her coffin was sealed, the prince went to say a last goodbye and placed her treasured sapphire ring upon her hand. He kissed her forehead and gently whispered,
May this ring remind you that I am always with you, and you will forever be in my heart.
A few weeks later, after Gwendolen was buried, a poor old woman sat praying in the chapel. The priest passed by and exchanged pleasantries with the woman before carrying on with his duties. The next day, the priest once again observed the old woman and was about to walk by when he noticed on her finger she wore a large sapphire ring. Believing she must have stolen the ring, he alerted the police, and the woman was quickly arrested. She pleaded her innocence, but the engraving inside the ring of Lady Gwendolen, May 1835, revealed its true owner. When faced with the evidence, the old woman broke down and agreed to confess how she'd acquired the ring. The woman told of how she'd been praying in the chapel as she did so every day. As she prayed, she'd heard footsteps behind her and turned around expecting to see the priest. When she looked, however, the priest was nowhere to be seen, and instead stood a beautiful dark-haired woman wearing a wedding dress. The old woman was so taken aback by the bride's beauty that she could not muster any words to say. Instead, the bride spoke kindly to her and asked for whom did she pray.
I pray every day for a better life for my children, where food is plentiful and they do not have to go to bed hungry.
The bride knelt down beside the old woman and taking her hand in hers said,
Take this ring and use it to better you and your children's lives.
and slipped a large sapphire ring upon the old woman's finger.
Oh no, my lady, I could not take such a thing from you.
Hush now, it is yours.
She replied.
Your need of it is greater than mine. Let us pray together.
The old woman did as she was asked and shut her eyes and prayed, but when she opened them again, the bride had vanished. On news of the old woman's tale reaching the prince, he demanded that his wife's coffin be opened in his presence, so that he could see for himself if her story were true. When the coffin was retrieved from the tomb, there were no signs of the seals being broken, but undeterred, the prince still insisted on seeing inside. When it was opened, his beautiful wife looked as if she were merely sleeping, and to his shock, her sapphire ring was gone. So touched by his wife's generosity and kindness from beyond the grave, the prince insisted that all charges against the old woman were dropped. He also funded the woman's children's education so that they could create a better life for themselves and their devoted mother. So successful were the children's studies that one of them went on to be a well-known figure in the Italian literary world.